This powerful story of Judge Vanessa Mitchell teaches us several profound lessons about justice, perseverance, and systemic corruption. First, it demonstrates how quickly discrimination can escalate from a seemingly isolated incident into a coordinated campaign designed to destroy someone's life and career. What began as a flight attendant's racist treatment revealed a vast conspiracy of corporate power undermining judicial independence. Second, the story highlights how racism is often weaponized as a tool by powerful interests. Bradley Winter's discriminatory behavior wasn't just personal prejudice. It was deliberately deployed as the opening move in a calculated strategy to discredit a respected judge who threatened corporate interests. Third, we see the critical importance of allies in fighting injustice. Vanessa couldn't have exposed the truth alone. It took a diverse coalition: Ellie's technical skills, Marcus's loyalty, Judge Raymond's influence, Agent Lopez's tactical expertise, and even Richard Coleman's eventual courage to overcome seemingly insurmountable odds. Fourth, the narrative reveals how systems meant to protect justice can be corrupted. The same institutions that should have protected Vanessa, law enforcement, the media, the Judicial Ethics Committee, were weaponized against her, demonstrating how deeply power and money can compromise our societal safeguards. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, this story reminds us that fighting for justice is rarely a single battle, but rather an ongoing war. Even after victory against Tech Global, Vanessa discovered the fight had just begun. True justice requires vigilance, courage, and a willingness to stand firm even when the forces arrayed against you seem overwhelming. What moments in this story resonated most with you? Have you ever witnessed or experienced discrimination that seemed orchestrated rather than random? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story moved you and you believe in standing against injustice, please like and subscribe for more powerful narratives that expose uncomfortable truths about our society. Remember, awareness is the first step toward change. Thank you for joining us on this journey, and may we all find the courage to stand firm against injustice, no matter how powerful the opposition. Marcus Washington had not always been a billionaire. Born to a struggling single mother in South Chicago, he had fought against discrimination his entire life. His tech company, Wash Tech Solutions, revolutionized digital privacy software, making him one of the wealthiest black men in America. But money couldn't shield his son from racism. Elijah Washington had inherited his father's brilliant mind and attended MIT at just 19, keeping his famous parentage quiet, preferring to be judged on merit alone. This wasn't the first time Elijah had faced racial profiling. Despite his expensive clothes and impeccable manners, he'd been followed in stores, questioned by security guards, and once even handcuffed by police responding to a call about a suspicious person who turned out to be Elijah studying in his own college library. Father and son had developed protocols for these situations: document everything, remain calm, and if necessary, escalate to legal authorities. Atlantic Air Flight 2157 from Boston to San Francisco should have been routine. Elijah was returning home after acing his final exams, looking forward to summer break. Dressed in simple jeans, a hoodie, and sneakers like any college student, he boarded with his premium ticket, ready for the 6-hour journey. Problems began immediately. When Elijah approached the first-class cabin, flight attendant Rachel Chen stopped him cold. "Economy boarding is from the rear entrance," she said without checking his ticket. "I'm in first class," Elijah replied politely, holding out his boarding pass. Chen examined it with obvious suspicion, checking it against his ID twice. "Fine," she finally said, her tone making clear she thought he didn't belong. Throughout the boarding process, Chen's behavior grew increasingly hostile. She promptly served drinks to other first-class passengers, but ignored Elijah's requests. When he pressed the call button, she took 15 minutes to respond, then acted annoyed at the interruption. The situation escalated when Chen accused Elijah of having a bag that looked similar to another passenger's. "Sir, I think you've taken someone else's property," she announced loudly, drawing attention from nearby passengers. "This is my bag," Elijah stated calmly, showing her the luggage tag with his name. Anyone can put a tag on a bag, Chen replied. The confrontation intensified when Elijah stood up to retrieve his ID from the overhead compartment to prove ownership. "Sit down immediately," Chen demanded, her voice rising. When Elijah continued reaching for his bag, explaining his intentions, Chen grabbed his arm. "I said sit down." Elijah gently removed her hand. "Please don't touch me. I'm just getting my ID." That's when it happened. Rachel Chen slapped him hard across the face, the crack echoing through the cabin. Blood appeared at the corner of Elijah's mouth as shocked passengers reached for their phones. "You people never learn your place," Chen hissed, loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. The silence that followed was deafening. Elijah, hand to his cheek, didn't react angrily. Instead, he calmly took out his phone and dialed. "Dad, it's happening again," he said quietly. Flight 2157. First-class cabin. Flight attendant named Rachel Chen just assaulted me. Yes, there are witnesses and videos. Marcus Washington had prepared for situations like this. As one of the government's largest technology contractors, he had connections throughout federal agencies. Within minutes, air traffic control contacted the flight. The pilot's voice came over the intercom, noticeably shaken. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. I've just received orders from federal aviation authorities. This flight is being grounded immediately at Cleveland Hopkins International Airport. Please remain seated until further instructions." Rachel Chen's face drained of color as she realized the potential consequences of her actions. Other passengers murmured in confusion and frustration. No one yet understood that they were witnessing the beginning of a battle that would expose decades of systemic discrimination and shake an entire industry to its core. The emergency landing procedures created an atmosphere of tension throughout the aircraft. Captain Douglas Whitman, a veteran pilot with 30 years of experience, expertly guided Flight 2157 into an unscheduled landing at Cleveland Hopkins International Airport. As the plane taxied to a remote part of the airfield, passengers pressed their faces against windows, spotting police vehicles, airport security, and what appeared to be federal agents waiting on the tarmac. Inside the cabin, Rachel Chen had disappeared into the crew area, while other flight attendants attempted to maintain calm among increasingly agitated passengers. "This is ridiculous," complained a middle-aged white businessman loudly. "They're grounding an entire flight because someone got their feelings hurt." Others were more sympathetic. "I saw what happened," said an elderly woman seated across from Elijah. "That was assault, plain and simple." Passengers had divided into factions, some filming Elijah suspiciously, others offering support. A young, white woman approached him. "I got the whole thing on video. That was absolutely unacceptable. I'm Zoe Parker. I have a pretty big following online. Want me to post it?" Elijah thanked her but explained his father's legal team would handle everything. Within the hour, passengers were allowed to disembark into a cordoned-off area of the terminal. Airline staff tried controlling the narrative immediately. A management representative in an immaculate suit approached Elijah. "Mr. Washington, we deeply regret this unfortunate misunderstanding. If you'll come with me to our private lounge, we can resolve this matter discreetly." His voice lowered. "We're prepared to offer generous compensation for your inconvenience, including lifetime premium membership." Elijah declined politely. "I'll wait here, thank you. My father and our attorneys are already en route." The representative's pleasant demeanor hardened. "Sir, you're delaying hundreds of passengers from reaching their destination. The sensible thing would be to—" He was interrupted by a commotion at the terminal entrance. Marcus Washington had arrived. Unlike his modestly dressed son, Marcus projected power in his tailored charcoal suit. Accompanying him were 4 individuals carrying leather briefcases, clearly attorneys, and 2 others who moved with the alertness of security personnel. Passengers began recognizing the tech mogul, phones rising to capture the moment. "That's Marcus Washington. The Wash Tech guy? He's worth billions." The airline representative blanched, immediately getting on his phone. Marcus embraced his son, examining the bruise forming on his cheek before addressing the representative. "My son was assaulted by your employee in front of dozens of witnesses. This isn't going away with Sky Miles and an upgrade. Meanwhile, videos of the incident were spreading across social media platforms. Atlantic Air assault was trending within hours. The airline's PR team scrambled, issuing a statement. Atlantic Air is investigating an incident involving a passenger and crew member. We take all allegations seriously and are working with authorities to determine exactly what occurred. Behind the scenes, the airline's response was far less measured. Kevin Blackwell, Atlantic Air's chief of operations, assembled a crisis team with clear instructions. Control the narrative. Find anything we can use against the kid. I want dirt, and I want it now. Rachel Chen, sequestered in an airline office, was already crafting her defense with company attorneys. He was aggressive and non-compliant, she insisted. I felt threatened and acted to protect myself and other passengers. She claimed Elijah had used threatening language and made sudden movements, allegations directly contradicted by passenger videos. Marcus's legal team, led by attorney Gabriela Rodriguez, moved efficiently. They collected contact information from supportive passengers, secured copies of videos, and filed preliminary legal actions against both Rachel Chen individually and Atlantic Air corporately. Gabriela, a formidable Harvard-educated litigator, known for winning impossible cases, addressed the assembled media that had begun gathering at the airport. What happened today isn't just about one incident. It represents a pattern of discrimination that persists in American institutions. My client, a 19-year-old college student, was physically assaulted for the crime of flying while black. The airline attempted to regain control of the situation by having airport security clear the terminal area, claiming security protocols. When officers approached Marcus and Elijah, suggesting they move to a private area, Gabriela Rodriguez stepped forward. My clients aren't going anywhere. They've been victims of assault and discrimination. Any attempt to remove them will be added to our lawsuit as further civil rights violations. She nodded toward the dozen cameras recording the exchange. I'm sure you don't want that kind of publicity. The security team retreated after brief radio consultations with superiors. Atlantic Air had lost the first battle in what would become an increasingly bitter war. Have you ever witnessed discrimination and wondered if you should speak up? Would you have had the courage to record the incident like Zoe did? Or would you have minded your own business? Comment number 1, if you believe witnesses should always document injustice. Or number 2, if you think it's better to stay uninvolved. What do you think Marcus Washington will do next with his wealth and influence? Will he accept a private settlement, or take this fight all the way to expose the entire system? Hit that like button if you believe justice should be public, and subscribe to follow this powerful story as we discover how deep the discrimination at Atlantic Air really goes. The real question is, how far will the airline go to silence the Washingtons and protect their reputation? The morning after the airport confrontation, Elijah woke to discover his face plastered across news outlets nationwide, but not as a victim. Headlines read, "Billionaire's son causes flight chaos," and "Privileged student forces emergency landing. Over argument." Kevin Blackwell had moved quickly. Atlantic Air's chief of operations had deep connections throughout the media and transportation industry, cultivated over 3 decades of work. By 6 a.m., he had assembled a war room at corporate headquarters with one mission: destroy the Washington family's credibility. "I've got journalists digging into the kid's background," Blackwell informed Charles Harrison, the airline's CEO, during an emergency call. "We found some promising angles. Complaints from professors about his entitled attitude, a disciplinary hearing for arguing with campus security. Nothing serious, but we can paint a pattern." Harrison, speaking from his vacation home, sounded nervous. "The videos look bad, Kevin. People clearly heard Chen's racial comment." "Videos can be misleading without context," Blackwell replied confidently. "We're already releasing statements from crew members saying the kid was being disruptive before recording started. Chen might have chosen her words poorly, but she was responding to aggressive behavior." The counter-offensive moved beyond mere statements. By midday, Atlantic Air's legal department delivered a threatening letter to the Washingtons' family. It claimed Elijah had violated federal aviation laws by disobeying crew member instructions, interfering with their duties, and causing unnecessary emergency procedures that cost the airline millions. They threatened a countersuit for $20 million unless all legal action was dropped immediately. Meanwhile, Sarah Miller, the junior flight attendant who had witnessed everything, found herself in an impossible position. Called into a meeting with airline management, she was presented with a prepared statement describing Elijah as belligerent and uncooperative. "We just need your signature confirming this account," said the human resources director, sliding the document forward. Sarah hesitated. "But that's not what happened. I saw everything. He was polite even after being provoked multiple times." The HR director's smile disappeared. "Sarah, you're still in your probationary period. Team players advance at Atlantic Air. Those who aren't." She let the implication hang in the air. Behind the airline's aggressive response lay concerning connections. Senator Richard Maxwell, chairman of the Transportation Committee and major recipient of airline industry donations, made private calls to the FAA suggesting the incident was being blown out of proportion for political purposes. Maxwell had more than political interest in the airline. He held substantial stock through family trusts and had a son-in-law on the board of directors. The Washington family soon discovered the attacks weren't limited to public relations. Marcus's technology company, WashTech Solutions, suddenly faced an unscheduled audit from government regulators, focusing on contracts worth billions. Their secure servers experienced sophisticated hacking attempts. Elijah's private college records were mysteriously leaked to tabloids. Marcus recognized the pattern. "They're using everything they have against us," he told Gabriela Rodriguez during a secure conference call. "This goes beyond normal corporate damage control. Someone's pulling strings," Gabriela agreed. "We've identified unusual coordination between supposedly independent news organizations. The same talking points, sometimes word for word, appearing across different networks. And these regulatory actions against your company are suspiciously timed." The public battle intensified as millions took sides. Atlantic Air loyalists and those harboring racial bias rallied behind hashtags like "spoiled rich kid" and "respect flight crew." Others supported Knox justice for Elijah and boycott Atlantic Air. Cultural commentators debated whether wealth shielded Black Americans from racism or simply changed its form. Through it all, Elijah received increasingly disturbing messages online. Anonymous users posted his home address, class schedule, and regular hangouts. Death threats arrived daily. "You should have stayed in your place," read one. "Next time it won't just be a slap," promised another. The final blow came when an anonymous source sent Elijah's complete personal data, including social security number, banking information, and private medical records, to every major news outlet with a fabricated story about tax evasion. Though most publications declined to publish the clearly stolen information, the damage was done. Elijah's digital life was compromised, forcing him to change every account, password, and security measure. "They're trying to make us regret ever challenging them," Elijah told his father that night, exhausted from dealing with identity theft precautions. "They want us to take a settlement and disappear." Marcus placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "That's exactly why we can't. This isn't just about one incident anymore. They've revealed something rotten at the core of the system. If they're willing to go this far against us, with all our resources, imagine what happens to people without our advantages." Sarah Miller couldn't sleep. For the third night since the incident, she stared at her ceiling, replaying the moment Rachel Chen had slapped Elijah Washington. She had witnessed Chen's escalating behavior over months, the way she, randomly, selected passengers of color for extra scrutiny, her dismissive tone when addressing non-white customers, her complaints in the crew lounge about certain people not belonging in first class. Sarah had documented some incidents in her personal journal, unsure what to do with the information. The airline HR director's thinly veiled threat echoed in her mind. At 26, with substantial student debt and no family financial support, Sarah couldn't afford to lose her job, yet she couldn't participate in this cover-up either. At 3 a.m., she made her decision. Using a burner email account from a coffee shop Wi-Fi, she contacted Gabriela Rodriguez. "I have information about the incident and similar previous events. Rachel Chen has a history. Atlantic Air knows and has hidden it. They arranged a meeting at a small diner 50 miles from Cleveland, away from company eyes. Sarah arrived wearing sunglasses and a baseball cap, constantly checking for surveillance. Gabriella came alone as promised, recording equipment ready. For 2 hours, Sarah detailed everything: Chen's pattern of discriminatory behavior, management's awareness, and their systematic suppression of complaints. "There's a folder in the HR system labeled Chen Customer Relations," Sarah explained. "It contains at least 7 complaints from minority passengers about discriminatory treatment, all marked resolved without action or passenger compensation provided." Most damning was Sarah's account of a meeting 3 months earlier. Kevin Blackwell personally told supervisors that passenger complaints needed to be managed more discreetly, and that crew judgment shouldn't be undermined by subjective accusations of bias. He specifically mentioned Rachel as someone who maintains appropriate standards despite passenger complaints. Sarah also revealed something unexpected. Chen had previously confided in her about belonging to an online forum where airline employees shared stories about problem passengers, often using racial coding and derogatory terms. She showed me posts once laughing about them. "They call themselves the Real Flight Club. It's private, but I remember the web address." Gabriella's team worked quickly with this new information. Tech experts recovered deleted security footage from Cleveland Airport showing the confrontation from multiple angles. Digital investigators infiltrated the Real Flight Club, finding hundreds of racist posts, including several from Chen's username describing ways to put entitled minorities in their place. When combined with Sarah's testimony and passenger videos, they had overwhelming evidence of both individual and systemic discrimination. Confident in their strengthened case, Gabriella filed formal complaints with the FAA, Department of Transportation, and Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. The federal response was swift. James Thompson, a senior FAA investigator, launched an official probe into Atlantic Air's handling of discrimination complaints. News coverage shifted as journalists received evidence packets from Rodriguez's office. Even normally airline-friendly commentators couldn't ignore the mounting evidence. Victory seemed within reach until disaster struck. Despite Gabriella's precautions, someone inside their team leaked Sarah's identity to Atlantic Air. Within hours of the leak, Sarah received termination papers citing violation of confidentiality agreements. By evening, she discovered she'd been blacklisted throughout the industry, with job applications receiving immediate rejections. Her professional reputation was systematically destroyed. Then came personal attacks. Sarah returned home to find "traitor" spray-painted across her apartment door. Her social media accounts were flooded with abuse. Family members received harassing calls. Her parents' home address was posted online with false claims she had stolen from passengers. Through it all, the Washingtons supported her, providing security and alternative housing. "Your family now," Marcus told her. "No one stands alone against this kind of intimidation." Though safe in a Washington-provided apartment, Sarah maintained contact with former colleagues who secretly supported her. Late one night, she received an urgent text from a flight attendant friend. They deleted everything, all Chen's files, server, maintenance, no records left. Sarah immediately called Gabriella, who advised her to document this information and stay put until morning. She never arrived at the morning meeting. At 5:43 a.m., while driving to meet Gabriella, Sarah's car was forced off an isolated road by a black SUV with tinted windows. First responders found her vehicle wrapped around a tree, Sarah unconscious and critically injured. At the hospital, doctors placed her in a medically induced coma, listing her condition as extremely critical. Police classified it as a hit-and-run accident, but Marcus hired private investigators who found suspicious tire marks suggesting deliberate ramming. The message was clear: anyone who challenged the system would pay a devastating price. Sarah Miller's accident changed everything. Marcus Washington immediately hired Sentinel Security, an elite private firm staffed by former military and intelligence professionals, to protect everyone connected to the case. Their first assessment was sobering. "This isn't random intimidation. It's organized, professional, and well-funded. Someone very powerful wants this case buried." While Sarah fought for her life in the hospital under 24-hour guard, the investigation continued. Marcus assigned his company's top security analysts to examine the digital trail. They uncovered troubling connections between Atlantic Air executives and Senator Richard Maxwell beyond what was publicly known. The senator's family trust doesn't just own airline stock, reported Elijah after reviewing the findings. They owned the land where 3 major Atlantic Air terminals were built, selling at massively inflated prices. We're talking hundreds of millions in sweetheart deals hidden through shell companies. Even more concerning, Senator Maxwell had begun making quiet calls to key FAA officials. James Thompson, the lead investigator, suddenly found himself reporting to a new supervisor who questioned the disproportionate resources dedicated to what amounts to a customer service complaint. The pressure became explicit when Thompson received a call from the senator himself. "James, we go back 20 years, Maxwell said smoothly. This Washington situation is becoming a political circus. The department needs steady hands to ensure we don't overreact to what was clearly a minor incident blown out of proportion." Thompson, a career civil servant nearing retirement, recognized the implicit threat to his pension and future. The Washington team watched with growing concern as major news networks suddenly dropped the story. Reporters who had eagerly covered developments now returned with apologetic messages about editorial decisions and shifting priorities. Smaller outlets and social media remained interested, but mainstream coverage virtually disappeared overnight. "They're shutting down every official avenue," Gabriella told Marcus during a secure meeting in WashTec's Faraday-caged conference room. "The FAA investigation is being smothered. Media coverage is being suppressed. We need to try something different." That something different emerged from an unexpected source. Shortly after news of Sarah's accident spread among airline employees, Gabriella's secure tip line received a flood of messages. Flight attendants, baggage handlers, gate agents, and even pilots began sharing similar experiences. "It's not just Rachel Chen," Gabriella explained to the Washingtons. "Dozens of employees describe systematic discrimination against minority passengers. Several mention unofficial policies directing increased scrutiny of black passengers, especially in first-class or business sections." The Washington team decided to take their evidence directly to the public through an FAA hearing. Although increasingly compromised, the agency couldn't legally refuse to hold a public forum once formally requested. The hearing, scheduled for a Tuesday morning, drew limited media presence but a packed audience. For 4 hours, witness after witness testified to discriminatory practices. Former Atlantic Air employees described unwritten policies. Minority passengers recounted humiliating experiences. Data analysts presented statistics showing minority passengers were 27 times more likely to be downgraded, questioned, or removed from flights. Elijah's testimony was particularly powerful. He wasn't just the victim in a viral video, but a poised, articulate witness who placed his experience within the larger pattern. "What happened to me wasn't random or isolated," he explained. "It represents something systemic and intentional. When I was slapped, it wasn't just an assault on me, but a symptom of a culture that views certain passengers as inherently suspicious and undeserving of respect." Inside Atlantic Air headquarters, panic spread as the hearing was live-streamed to thousands of viewers. Stock prices dropped 8% in a single day. Emergency board meetings were called. CEO Charles Harrison demanded Blackwell find a way to make this disappear. Just when it seemed public opinion had shifted decisively in the Washington's favor, James Thompson delivered his preliminary findings. Reading from a prepared statement, his voice noticeably strained, Thompson announced, "After careful review of all available evidence, this investigation finds insufficient basis to conclude that systemic discrimination exists at Atlantic Air. While the incident involving Mr. Washington was unfortunate, it appears to be an isolated case of poor judgment rather than evidence of broader policy issues." He dismissed key testimony as anecdotal and rejected statistical analyses as methodologically flawed. The audience erupted in outrage. Gabriella immediately challenged the findings, pointing out dozens of contradictions between Thompson's conclusions and the evidence presented. But the damage was done. Official channels had failed. The system designed to provide accountability had instead become another tool of oppression. As the hearing concluded, Thompson avoided eye contact. with the Washingtons. Only Elijah noticed the small piece of paper Thompson slipped into his pocket as they passed in the hallway. Later, in private, Elijah read the hastily scribbled note. Not safe to talk. They have everything. Look deeper into Maxwell. Offshore accounts. Operation Sky Shield. Could powerful people really suppress justice so completely? Would you have the courage to keep fighting when every system seems corrupted? Comment number 1. If you believe the Washingtons should continue their battle despite the dangers, or number 2, if you think they should protect themselves and walk away. How far would you go to expose discrimination if you witnessed it firsthand? Like this video if you believe one person's stand against injustice can make a difference, and subscribe to see how Elijah uses his tech skills to fight back against a system designed to silence him. The question remains, with official investigations compromised and mainstream media silenced, what weapons do the Washingtons have left in their arsenal? Elijah Washington had inherited more than wealth from his father. He possessed the same innovative mind that had built WashTech Solutions into a privacy technology giant. While pursuing his computer science degree at MIT, Elijah had developed cutting-edge security tools as side projects. Now, facing an adversary that controlled traditional power structures, he turned to technology. They've compromised the official investigation and blocked media coverage, Elijah explained to his father and Gabriella, but they can't control information we obtain directly. He revealed something he hadn't mentioned before. When I boarded that flight, I was wearing this. He pointed to what appeared to be an ordinary lapel pin. It's a prototype I've been developing, a high-definition recording device with encrypted cloud backup. Everything from the moment I boarded was captured, including conversations I had with Chen before other passengers started recording. The footage was damning. It showed Rachel Chen's unprovoked hostility from the moment Elijah stepped aboard, capturing numerous microaggressions and eventually the assault itself. Unlike passenger videos that started mid-confrontation, Elijah's recording provided complete context, eliminating any doubt about who had instigated the incident. But Elijah's technological response went further. I've been analyzing Atlantic Air's internal communications, he admitted, showing his father screens of metadata. Legally, he added, seeing Gabriella's concerned expression. I've only accessed publicly available information and data packets transmitted over unsecured networks. His analysis revealed coordinated communication patterns between airline executives, Senator Maxwell's office, and several media organizations immediately following the incident. The timing and frequency suggested orchestrated damage control beyond normal public relations. More damning evidence emerged when an anonymous airline executive, inspired by Sarah's bravery, provided internal memos outlining what the company called enhanced passenger screening guidelines. Though carefully worded to avoid explicit racial language, the documents included profiles and criteria that disproportionately targeted minority passengers for additional scrutiny, particularly in premium cabins. Marcus saw an opportunity to leverage his company's resources. WashTech has been developing a secure platform for whistleblowers in authoritarian countries, he explained. We can repurpose it to allow airline employees to safely document discrimination. Within 48 hours, the platform was live under the name Fair Skies. The secure site allowed anonymous reporting with evidence upload capabilities and military-grade encryption. They promoted it through targeted social media campaigns directly to airline employees nationwide. The response overwhelmed their servers. Hundreds of current and former employees from dozens of airlines submitted testimonies, photographs, internal documents, and recordings. A clear pattern emerged, not just within Atlantic Air but across the industry. AI analysis of the submissions revealed consistent discriminatory practices. Minority passengers were 3 times more likely to be questioned about their tickets, 7 times more likely to be asked to move from premium cabins, and 10 times more likely to be removed from flights for behavioral issues compared to white passengers exhibiting identical behavior. This is bigger than one incident or even one airline, Gabriella concluded after reviewing the data. It's industry-wide, systematic discrimination. While the Fair Skies platform collected evidence, another source emerged. A vice president at Atlantic Air, troubled by the company's response and facing terminal cancer, decided to clear his conscience. Using encrypted channels, he provided the Washington team with board meeting minutes, executive emails, and financial. Records showing the company had specifically allocated funds for passenger issue settlement packages, essentially hush money for discrimination victims, while simultaneously training staff on how to identify potentially disruptive passengers, using criteria that served as thin proxies for racial profiling. The evidence painted a compelling picture of systematic discrimination, but releasing it posed challenges. Traditional media remained largely closed to them, and they worried about putting more whistleblowers at risk. The solution came in the form of distributed disclosure, releasing different evidence packages to international media outlets, independent journalists, regulatory agencies in multiple countries, and congressional oversight committees simultaneously, making it impossible to suppress all channels at once. Just as they prepared to execute this plan, disaster struck again. Elijah's secure apartment was breached by a professional team that bypassed state-of-the-art security systems. Only his personal panic room and a hasty exit through a pre-planned escape route saved him from abduction or worse. Security camera footage showed 5 men in tactical gear with professional-grade equipment. Facial recognition matched one to a military contractor with ties to private security firms. They're not just trying to discredit us anymore, Marcus realized with horror. They're willing to physically harm or abduct my son to end this. The attack forced them to accelerate their timeline. Working from a series of secure locations, changing positions daily, Elijah and his father's team finalized their evidence distribution plan. Tomorrow morning, everything goes public, Marcus told his son as they reviewed final preparations. Every document, recording, and testimony will be released simultaneously through 50 different channels. Even with their resources, they can't stop all of it. What they didn't know was that Kevin Blackwell had already learned of their plan through a compromised team member. As Elijah and Marcus worked, Blackwell convened an emergency meeting with Senator Maxwell and CEO Harrison. The Washington problem requires immediate resolution, he stated coldly. They leave us no choice but to implement our final option. Dawn broke with a digital explosion as the Washington team executed their plan. Across 50 different platforms, evidence of systematic discrimination within the airline industry appeared simultaneously. International news outlets beyond American corporate influence ran extensive stories. Independent journalists received comprehensive evidence packages. Social media erupted with damning internal documents showing racial profiling directives thinly disguised as security protocols. Atlantic Air's stock plummeted 23% within hours. The hashtag #grounded by racism became the top trending topic worldwide. Elijah emerged as the public face of the movement, giving his first major interview to an independent news channel with 15 million subscribers. Appearing poised despite the recent attempt on his life, he methodically presented evidence while connecting it to his personal experience. "What happened to me is happening to people of color every day," he explained. "The difference is, I have the resources to fight back. Most victims are forced to accept the humiliation and move on." The interview garnered over 7 million views in just 6 hours. Celebrity support materialized rapidly. Athletes, musicians, and actors with tens of millions of followers shared their own experiences with discrimination in air travel. A famous filmmaker announced plans for a documentary. Civil rights organizations mobilized supporters for airport demonstrations. Atlantic Air's damage control machine sprang into action with a multi-pronged approach. They portrayed Elijah as an entitled rich kid, turning a minor incident into a vendetta. They questioned the authenticity of leaked documents. They highlighted Marcus Washington's government contracts, suggesting he was leveraging political connections inappropriately. Their most insidious strategy targeted Elijah personally. Paid trolls flooded comment sections with racist attacks, forcing him to limit social media engagement. Death threats became so specific and credible that he required constant security. Conservative commentators questioned his victim mentality, asking why someone with his privilege would play the race card. The Washington family had anticipated this counter-narrative. Their team monitored online attacks, documenting connections to accounts linked to PR firms retained by Atlantic Air. They arranged interviews with former airline employees who had witnessed discrimination firsthand, shifting focus from Elijah to the systemic nature of the problem. The movement gained unexpected momentum when passengers began boycotting Atlantic Air in significant numbers. Corporate clients, concerned about association with racism allegations, suspended travel contracts. The airline's competitors, seeing opportunity, publicly announced enhanced diversity training and anti-discrimination policies. As public opinion shifted decisively against Atlantic Air, shareholders grew increasingly restless. An investor group demanded emergency board meetings to discuss the crisis. Internal discord spread as employees split between defending company practices and pushing for reform. Flight attendants' unions issued statements supporting investigation of discrimination claims while distancing themselves from Chen's actions. The turning point came from unexpected quarters. Atlantic Air's commitment to diversity had previously earned them a prestigious Corporate Responsibility Award. Now, the awarding organization publicly announced a review, citing disturbing evidence, inconsistent with the values this recognition represents. The potential revocation of this widely advertised honor sent shockwaves through corporate leadership. CEO Charles Harrison requested a meeting with Marcus Washington to discuss pathways to meaningful resolution. Marcus agreed but insisted Elijah participate. Preparations for this high-stakes negotiation consumed the Washington team. They developed comprehensive demands, industry-wide policy changes, significant compensation for victims of discrimination, termination of executives who enabled racist practices, and mandatory transparency reporting. The negotiation would be live-streamed to prevent backroom deals. The night before this pivotal meeting, Elijah accepted an invitation to appear on National Tonight, a mainstream news program that had initially ignored the story, but now sought exclusive coverage. The Washington security team vetted the production thoroughly, checking staff credentials and securing the studio. Nevertheless, something went wrong. Midway through the interview, as Elijah described the evidence of systematic discrimination, he suddenly stumbled over his words. His eyelids grew heavy, his speech slurred. "I don't feel," he managed, before collapsing on national television. The broadcast cut to commercial as medical personnel rushed in. Hospital tests confirmed the worst. Elijah's water had been tampered with, containing a tasteless, nearly undetectable sedative. Though not life-threatening, the drug could have caused respiratory failure if combined with certain foods. The message was clear. Nowhere was completely safe. The assassination attempt transformed public perception entirely. Conspiracy theories about corporate violence against whistleblowers gained mainstream traction. The FBI launched an investigation into the poisoning attempt. Atlantic Air faced questions about potential involvement, destroying any remaining public goodwill. As Elijah recovered under heightened security, Marcus Washington addressed the nation in a televised statement. "They tried to silence my son first with a slap, then with character assassination, and now with poison. Each attempt has only strengthened our resolve. This isn't about one incident anymore. It's about whether powerful corporations can act with impunity, discriminating against some customers while physically threatening those who speak out. We will not be silenced." The ornate federal courthouse in Washington, D.C. fell silent as Judge Victoria Williams entered the courtroom. The lawsuit, Washington versus Atlantic Air, had become one of the most closely watched cases in decades. After Elijah's poisoning, public pressure forced the Department of Justice to fast-track the proceedings. Both sides had assembled legendary legal teams. Atlantic Air hired Donovan and Burke, a firm renowned for defending corporations against consumer claims. Their strategy became immediately apparent when lead attorney Thomas Donovan filed 12 separate motions to dismiss before proceedings even began. "Your Honor," Donovan argued, "this case represents an inappropriate attempt to transform a minor customer service incident into federal litigation. The plaintiff's claims of systematic discrimination are speculative and unsupported by admissible evidence." Gabriela Rodriguez countered forcefully. "The defense characterizes a recorded physical assault as a customer service incident and calls extensively documented discrimination speculative. Their motions demonstrate precisely why this case must proceed to challenge a system that minimizes racism and protects its perpetrators." Judge Williams allowed the case to continue, but signaled potential problems by commenting on the unusual breadth of the lawsuit's claims. Behind this concerning language lay troubling connections. Investigative journalists discovered Judge Williams had family ties to Atlantic Air's board. Her brother-in-law had served as a non-voting advisor to the airline's compensation committee. Despite calls for recusal, Williams insisted these connections were too remote to create actual bias. The legal battle intensified as Atlantic Air fought to limit admissible evidence. They challenged the legality of internal documents obtained through whistleblowers, claimed employee testimonies violated confidentiality agreements, and filed separate lawsuits against former employees who had spoken out. The airline's aggressive stance had a chilling effect, with several witnesses withdrawing from proceedings after receiving threatening letters from corporate attorneys. Jurisdiction became another battleground. Atlantic Air petitioned to move the case to a district with more favorable judicial precedents regarding discrimination claims. They argued procedural technicalities, claiming the Washington team had failed to properly exhaust administrative remedies before filing suit. Each maneuver required costly and time-consuming responses from the Washington legal team. This war of attrition served a clear purpose: to drain the plaintiff's resources and resolve. Even a billionaire would eventually question the mounting costs of protracted litigation. Throughout these proceedings, a parallel intimidation campaign targeted those supporting the Washingtons. Expert witnesses reported professional harassment. Academic researchers who had documented discrimination found their funding threatened. Civil rights organizations backing the case faced suspicious IRS audits. One particularly troubling incident involved a former Atlantic Air executive prepared to testify about discriminatory policies. The night before his deposition, his teenage daughter was followed home from school by an unmarked vehicle. No direct threats were made, but the message was unmistakable. As these tactics became public, they backfired spectacularly. Law school professors incorporated the case into ethics curriculums. Bar associations issued statements condemning witness intimidation. Hundreds of attorneys volunteered pro bono assistance to the Washington team. The case transformed from one family's fight to a rallying point for legal professionals concerned about justice system manipulation. The turning point in pre-trial proceedings came when Atlantic Air's attorneys presented Judge Williams with a confidential settlement proposal. The terms were extraordinary: $100 million to Elijah, comprehensive policy reforms, termination of involved executives including Kevin Blackwell, and a public apology, with one critical condition: complete confidentiality. The Washington family would need to sign non-disclosure agreements preventing them from ever discussing the case again. The airline's calculations were clear. The financial cost would be substantial, but manageable given their insurance coverage and reserves. The PR damage from policy changes and executive terminations would be significant, but temporary. The existential threat came from continued public exposure of their systematic discrimination. They needed the Washington silence more than anything else. Marcus and Elijah considered the offer carefully. $100 million could fund discrimination watchdog organizations for decades. The policy changes would protect future passengers. Justice would be partially served. But the systemic problems extended beyond one corporation, and without public accountability, backsliding seemed inevitable once media attention faded. After extensive deliberation, they declined the offer. "Some things cannot be resolved behind closed doors," Marcus explained to their legal team. "Racism thrives in shadows. Exposing it to light is the only lasting remedy." Judge Williams appeared displeased with their decision, commenting that reasonable parties typically seek resolution rather than vindication. This statement, inappropriate from a neutral arbiter, heightened concerns about her impartiality. The Washington team filed a formal motion for recusal, which Williams denied within hours without addressing their specific concerns. With trial proceedings finally underway, evidence presentation became the central battleground. Atlantic Air's attorneys objected to nearly every document, testimony, and expert analysis. Most troublingly, Judge Williams sustained many of these objections on questionable legal grounds. She excluded critical evidence including Elijah's lapel pin recording, whistleblower testimonies, and statistical analyses of discriminatory patterns, ruling them prejudicial, improperly obtained, or scientifically unsound. During a pivotal hearing, Gabriela Rodriguez argued passionately for the inclusion of comprehensive statistical evidence, showing racial disparities in passenger treatment. Judge Williams not only rejected the evidence, but threatened sanctions if the Washington team attempted to introduce similar analyses. The ruling effectively gutted the core of their systematic discrimination claims. After 3 weeks of increasingly one-sided rulings, the Washington team faced a devastating reality. Their most compelling evidence had been excluded, their witness list decimated, and their core claims undermined by judicial decisions. Judge Williams appeared poised to dismiss central elements of the case before it reached a jury. The system designed to provide impartial justice seemed thoroughly compromised. Have you ever felt the system was rigged against you despite having evidence on your side? Comment number 1 if you've experienced institutional barriers to justice, or number 2 if you've witnessed the powerful manipulating rules to protect themselves. Do you believe wealthy corporations should be able to hide discrimination behind confidential settlements, or does the public deserve to know the truth? Like this video if you think systemic racism should be exposed rather than settled in secret, and subscribe to see how the Washingtons will fight back when even the justice system fails them. The FBI is about to enter this story in a surprising way, but will federal agents be allies or obstacles? What would you do if every official avenue for justice was blocked by powerful interests working together to hide the truth? The unexpected breakthrough came on a Tuesday morning when Olivia Carter, a veteran FBI special agent specializing in civil rights violations, appeared at the Washington family's secure residence. "I need to speak with you regarding potential federal crimes connected to your case," she stated formally, showing her credentials. Inside, Agent Carter revealed the true purpose of her visit. "I've been investigating witness tampering in your case for 3 months. What began as a routine inquiry has uncovered something much larger." The FBI had opened an initial investigation following Sarah Miller's suspicious accident, standard procedure for potential witness tampering. But as Agent Carter dug deeper, alarming patterns emerged. Multiple witnesses in your case experienced intimidation, from professional threats to physical endangerment. That's not coincidental. It's coordinated criminal activity. Carter had meticulously documented each incident. Sarah's accident, the expert witness whose funding was threatened, the executive whose daughter was followed, and numerous others. Banking records revealed payments to private security firms from shell companies ultimately connected to Atlantic Air. More disturbing were communications between airline executives and political figures discussing the need to contain the Washington situation by any means necessary. "We're investigating potential violations of federal witness tampering statutes, obstruction of justice, conspiracy, and civil rights violations," Carter explained. "This goes beyond corporate misconduct into criminal territory." For the first time in months, Marcus and Elijah felt genuine hope. A federal criminal investigation would proceed regardless of Judge Williams's rulings in civil court. Evidence excluded from their lawsuit could be fully examined in criminal proceedings. The system might work after all. Agent Carter's team moved quickly, interviewing witnesses, subpoenaing records, and analyzing financial transactions. Through methodical investigation, they uncovered a complex web connecting Atlantic Air executives, Senator Maxwell, and various enforcement agencies. Most concerning was evidence suggesting Maxwell had pressured officials to prevent investigations. Carter particularly focused on FAA investigator James Thompson's abrupt reversal. When interviewed privately, Thompson confirmed Maxwell had threatened his pension and future employment if he didn't alter his findings. Thompson provided recorded conversations and emails documenting the senator's interference. The investigation expanded to examine Rachel Chen's suspicious death, initially ruled a suicide. Chen had contacted Gabriela Rodriguez the day before her death, indicating she wished to tell the whole truth about airline practices and who gave the orders. Before this meeting could occur, she was found dead in her apartment from an apparent overdose. Carter's forensic team discovered anomalies suggesting staged suicide. Toxicology reports indicated sedatives Chen had no prescription for, and the handwriting on her supposed suicide note showed signs of duress. The investigation reached a critical phase when Carter obtained warrants for Atlantic Air's executive communications. These revealed discussions about permanent solutions to the Washington problem and making examples of whistleblowers. CEO, Charles Harrison had personally approved funds for special security measures outside normal corporate channels, funds traced to the private contractors who had attempted to abduct Elijah. As evidence mounted, Carter prepared to bring charges against multiple executives, including Kevin Blackwell and Charles Harrison. Her investigation had also uncovered sufficient evidence to recommend prosecution of Senator Maxwell for obstruction of justice, witness tampering, and civil rights violations. Then came the intervention. Carter was summoned to a meeting with her superiors, including Deputy Director Wilson from Department of Justice headquarters. The message was delivered with bureaucratic precision. The Maxwell angle of this investigation is being reassigned to the Public Integrity Section for further review. In practical terms, this meant Carter was being removed from investigating the senator. Her protests were met with icy formality. "This isn't a request, Agent Carter. It's a direct order from the highest levels." Carter immediately recognized the implications. The Public Integrity Section review was a well-known tactic to bury politically sensitive investigations. Cases transferred there typically languished for years before being quietly closed without charges. She was being sidelined to protect Maxwell. Though formally prohibited from investigating the senator, Carter continued building cases against Atlantic Air executives. She worked tirelessly, knowing her window of opportunity was closing. Her superiors grew increasingly uncomfortable with her persistence, issuing resource prioritization directives and reassigning her team members to other cases. The final blow came without warning. Carter arrived at her office to find her case, files being packed by administrative staff. Her security clearance had been downgraded, removing her access to ongoing investigations. The official explanation cited procedural irregularities requiring comprehensive review of investigative methods. Without formally terminating the investigation, the DOJ had effectively killed it. That evening, Carter made an unprecedented decision. Risking her career and possibly her freedom, she met secretly with Marcus and Gabriella, bringing copies of key evidence. "I've upheld my oath to the Constitution for 22 years, she explained, voice tight with emotion. "What's happening here violates everything that oath represents. The public deserves to know." Though she couldn't legally provide them with all evidence, she offered detailed guidance on additional leads to pursue, including international financial transactions linked to Maxwell and Atlantic Air executives. Before leaving, Carter delivered one final piece of information. "They're planning something beyond legal maneuvers now. My last intelligence suggests Blackwell, Maxwell, and Harrison met privately to discuss a final solution to the Washington problem. Whatever they're planning, it's imminent and dangerous." The Washington family had exhausted domestic remedies. With the judicial system compromised, FBI investigation derailed, and media largely controlled, they needed a new approach. Marcus turned to international allies developed through decades of global business. Within 48 hours, their case received unprecedented global attention. Le Monde in France published an extensive exposé titled "American Justice for Sale." Der Spiegel in Germany released a comprehensive analysis of Atlantic Air's discriminatory practices. BBC produced a special investigation into corporate capture of American regulatory systems. Al Jazeera presented interviews with dozens of minority passengers describing discrimination on multiple airlines. These international outlets operated beyond the reach of American corporate influence. Their reporting triggered investigations by European aviation authorities, who threatened to revoke Atlantic Air's lucrative international landing rights pending discrimination reviews. Global human rights organizations filed complaints with the United Nations Human Rights Council. The International Air Transport Association faced pressure to establish anti-discrimination standards. Crucially, international coverage penetrated American information bubbles. Citizens who had seen little coverage on domestic networks suddenly encountered the story through social media, foreign sources, and independent journalism. The international focus created particular problems for Atlantic Air's business model. Foreign tourists, representing 27% of their passenger revenue, began booking alternative carriers. International corporate clients suspended contracts, citing reputational concerns. Global investment funds with anti-discrimination requirements divested from Atlantic Air stock, sending prices tumbling to historic lows. Marcus leveraged WashTech's secure communication infrastructure to coordinate the international response. Using encrypted channels, his team provided comprehensive evidence packages to trustworthy journalists worldwide. They established verification protocols to authenticate leaked documents, ensuring the highest journalistic standards were maintained. This wasn't just about winning their case anymore. It was about forcing systemic change through global pressure. Documentary filmmaker Jordan Rivera had been following the case from the beginning, capturing key developments for a planned streaming service release. Initially a small-scale project, the documentary expanded as the story grew. Rivera secured interviews with former Atlantic Air executives speaking anonymously, FAA whistleblowers, and passengers from dozens of discrimination incidents. International distribution deals guaranteed the documentary would reach audiences worldwide, regardless of domestic opposition. Atlantic Air faced an existential crisis. Stock values had plummeted 64% from pre-incident levels. Credit rating agencies downgraded their debt to near-junk status. Insurance carriers threatened to revoke coverage over unmitigated institutional risk factors. The company that had seemed untouchable now teetered on the edge of bankruptcy. Facing collapse, Atlantic Air's board of directors called an emergency meeting to discuss strategic alternatives. The discussion centered on two options: declaring bankruptcy to restructure operations, or replacing senior leadership and implementing comprehensive reforms. Shareholders demanded accountability, with institutional investors threatening derivative lawsuits against board members personally for breach of fiduciary duty in allowing the crisis to escalate. CEO Charles Harrison found himself fighting for his professional survival. Called to explain the company's catastrophic position, he blamed unforeseeable public relations challenges and disproportionate media response, rather than acknowledging fundamental problems. Board members, reviewing internal documents for the first time, were shocked by evidence of systematic discrimination and executive cover-ups. Harrison was questioned extensively about knowledge of witness intimidation and whether corporate funds had been misappropriated for potentially illegal activities. As pressure mounted, Harrison requested a brief recess and left the boardroom with Kevin Blackwell. Security cameras later revealed they proceeded directly to Senator Maxwell's private office for an urgent, unscheduled meeting. For 90 minutes, the three men conferred behind closed doors, phones powered off, no staff present. When they emerged, Harrison appeared visibly stressed while Blackwell and Maxwell exchanged confident glances. Marcus received warning of this meeting through Sentinel Security's surveillance team. "Whatever they're planning, it's happening now," the team leader reported. Their body language and security precautions suggest something beyond normal business discussions. That same evening, Harrison called Marcus directly, bypassing attorneys for the first time. "I want to end this," the CEO stated bluntly. "The board has authorized me to offer $200 million to settle all claims. Complete policy overhaul, public apology, everything you've asked for." Harrison proposed an in-person meeting the following morning to finalize terms, suggesting a private airfield where both parties could ensure appropriate security. Marcus recognized the danger immediately. The sudden capitulation after months of aggressive opposition felt wrong. The suggested location isolated from witnesses raised alarm bells, and the timing, immediately following the secret meeting with Maxwell, couldn't be coincidental. After consulting with security advisors, Marcus agreed to the meeting, but changed the location to WashTech headquarters with full security protocols. Harrison reluctantly accepted the change, but insisted on bringing Blackwell to ensure operational details are properly addressed. What Harrison didn't know was that the Washington team had received critical intelligence from an unexpected source. A junior senator on the Transportation Committee, troubled by Maxwell's increasingly erratic behavior, had secretly recorded a conversation where Maxwell, Blackwell, and Harrison discussed eliminating the Washington problem once and for all and ensuring no survivors to continue the case. The recording was partial and would be inadmissible in court, but it confirmed the planned meeting was almost certainly a trap. With this knowledge, Marcus implemented extraordinary security measures. The entire building was swept for explosives and surveillance devices. All electronic systems were isolated from external networks. Every person entering would undergo comprehensive screening, and armed security teams would maintain constant surveillance. Unknown to Harrison and Blackwell, international media had been discreetly positioned nearby. Whatever happened in this meeting would be documented beyond any possibility of cover-up or denial. The stage was set for final confrontation between the Washington family fighting for justice and corporate executives willing to take extreme measures to preserve their power and privilege. The morning of the meeting, Marcus received an urgent call. "Sir, Elijah never arrived at his safe house last night." The security team had discovered his protective detail unconscious from an unknown substance, their communications disabled. Elijah Washington had vanished without a trace. Security footage from nearby buildings showed a tactical team in unmarked vehicles intercepting Elijah's car at a traffic light. The precision operation took less than 40 seconds. Professional, methodical, and virtually untraceable. Marcus immediately canceled the meeting with Harrison and initiated emergency protocols. Private investigators, digital forensics experts, and security consultants mobilized to locate his son. Gabriela Rodriguez filed emergency motions with every relevant court and agency. None of these conventional approaches yielded results. Hours passed with no ransom demand, no communication from the kidnappers. Marcus received a text message from an encrypted number. "Meeting proceeds as scheduled or consequences will be severe. Come alone." Attached was an image of Elijah, unconscious, with that day's newspaper visible. Marcus faced an impossible choice: walk into an obvious trap or abandon his son. He chose a third option. Working with his most trusted security advisors, including several former intelligence operatives, he developed a high-risk strategy. First, they identified the likely location holding Elijah. Cell tower data placed the kidnapping team's vehicles near an abandoned manufacturing facility owned by a shell company connected to Senator Maxwell's family trust. Thermal imaging from private surveillance aircraft detected human signatures and active security systems inside the supposedly vacant building. Second, Marcus secretly contacted Agent Olivia Carter, who had continued investigating unofficially, despite her removal from the case. Though unable to obtain official FBI support, she agreed to assist personally, bringing several trusted colleagues who shared her commitment to justice above politics. Third, Marcus prepared for his meeting with Harrison and Blackwell, but with crucial modifications. He would attend as requested, creating the impression he was complying with their demands. Meanwhile, the rescue team would use the distraction to extract Elijah from captivity. The morning of the meeting brought new complications. Sentinel Security intercepted communications, suggesting Senator Maxwell had deployed private military contractors as reinforcements at the holding site. The facility's security now included former Special Forces operators with advanced equipment and tactical training. The rescue became exponentially more dangerous, but delay wasn't an option. Intelligence suggested Elijah would be moved to an untraceable location within hours. At precisely 10 a.m., Marcus Washington entered the conference room where Harrison and Blackwell waited. Both men appeared tense but confident, believing they controlled the situation. "Where are your attorneys?" Harrison asked, noticing Marcus had come alone as instructed. "This is between us now," Marcus replied calmly. "No lawyers, no witnesses. Just a father trying to protect his family." His demeanor betrayed nothing of the rescue operation unfolding miles away. What followed was a psychological chess match. Harrison offered increasingly generous settlement terms while carefully avoiding any admission of kidnapping. Blackwell remained largely silent, occasionally checking his phone with growing anxiety. As expected, status updates from the holding site failed to arrive. 27 minutes into this tense negotiation, Marcus received a prearranged signal, a specific notification tone indicating the rescue team had secured Elijah. Only then did Marcus reveal his full knowledge of their conspiracy. "Your men at the facility have been neutralized," he informed them calmly. "My son is safe. Federal agents are securing evidence as we speak. This meeting was never about settlement. It was about keeping you distracted while we rescued Elijah." The color drained from Harrison's face. Blackwell lunged for the door only. to find it secured. Their elaborate trap had been reversed, transforming from an assassination opportunity to their own capture. What they didn't know was that Marcus had arranged for law enforcement to monitor the meeting remotely. Every incriminating word had been recorded and transmitted to multiple agencies simultaneously. Within minutes, FBI agents from the field, office, responding to evidence of kidnapping which overrode political interference, entered the building. Harrison and Blackwell were taken into custody, charged with conspiracy to commit kidnapping, attempted murder, and numerous related federal offenses. At the manufacturing facility, the rescue had been equally successful. Agent Carter and her team, supplemented by Marcus's security personnel, had executed a precision operation to extract Elijah while gathering extensive evidence. They discovered not just Elijah, but servers containing comprehensive records of the entire conspiracy. These servers, maintained by Blackwell's private security team, documented every aspect of their operation from initial response to the slapping incident through the kidnapping plans. Most damning were video recordings of planning meetings where Maxwell, Harrison, and Blackwell explicitly discussed eliminating the Washington family and covering up the crimes. The evidence was overwhelming and irrefutable. Within hours, federal prosecutors from multiple divisions had opened investigations. The case had grown from discrimination to encompass RICO violations, civil rights crimes, witness tampering, attempted murder, kidnapping, and conspiracy. Senator Maxwell, attending a fundraiser when the arrests occurred, fled to a private airfield when he received news of the operation's failure. Federal agents intercepted his plane moments before takeoff, discovering multiple passports and over $2 million in cash on board, clear evidence of planned flight to avoid prosecution. Elijah, though drugged during the abduction, recovered quickly under medical care. His first public statement captured the essence of their ordeal. They tried to silence us through intimidation, corruption, and finally violence. Their escalation reveals how deeply racism is embedded in our systems. When powerful people are willing to kidnap and murder to protect discriminatory practices, it proves how important this fight truly is. 6 months after the kidnapping, the federal courthouse overflowed as Judge Raymond Ortiz prepared to announce sentences in United States versus Harrison et al. The trial had captivated the nation, exposing corporate criminality at the highest levels. Charles Harrison received 27 years for conspiracy, kidnapping, and attempted murder. Kevin Blackwell, identified as the operation's architect, received 35 years. Senator Richard Maxwell, convicted on 23 federal counts, including corruption, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy, received a 40-year sentence, effectively ensuring he would spend the remainder of his life incarcerated. Beyond these primary defendants, 19 Atlantic Air executives and managers received sentences ranging from 5 to 15 years for their roles in discrimination, evidence tampering, and witness intimidation. During sentencing, Judge Ortiz delivered a powerful statement. This case represents not merely individual criminal acts, but the corruption of fundamental systems meant to protect all citizens equally. When corporations, courts, and public officials conspire to deprive Americans of their civil rights, they undermine the very foundation of our democracy. Rachel Chen, originally portrayed as the primary villain, emerged as a complex figure during proceedings. Evidence revealed she had been directly instructed by management to apply enhanced scrutiny to minority passengers in premium cabins. Following her death, officially reclassified as homicide, investigators discovered journal entries showing her growing discomfort with these policies and intention to expose them, likely prompting her murder by company operatives. The most startling testimony came from Captain Douglas Whitman, who revealed a decades-long industry practice of pilot-level discrimination. "We called it cabin climate control," he admitted. Captains would receive confidential reports identifying high-maintenance passengers, coded language for minorities in premium classes. We were expected to support crew members who maintained appropriate service standards, meaning those who kept these passengers in their place. His testimony implicated executives across multiple airlines, expanding investigations industry-wide. Marcus and Elijah Washington declined personal financial compensation beyond actual damages, directing settlement funds towards systematic reform. The Elijah Washington Foundation for Transportation Equity was established with $300 million from Atlantic Air's corporate assets, creating an independent watchdog organization monitoring discrimination across all transportation sectors. Their most significant achievement was the development and implementation of comprehensive bias monitoring technology. WashTech engineers created systems integrating AI analysis of booking patterns, treatment disparities, and complaint resolutions to identify discriminatory practices before they became systemic. This technology was donated to regulatory agencies worldwide and made open source for public oversight. Atlantic Air, following bankruptcy reorganization, emerged as a transformed company under entirely new leadership. The reconstituted airline adopted industry-leading anti-discrimination policies, unconscious bias training, and transparent reporting systems. Former critics became key advisors in rebuilding corporate culture. Sarah Miller's recovery became an inspiration throughout the process. After months of rehabilitation, she returned as a powerful advocate for transportation workers, establishing a whistleblower support network to protect those exposing corporate misconduct. The Washington Foundation provided lifetime security and financial support, allowing her to dedicate herself fully to advocacy work. A year after the original incident, Elijah reflected on their journey during the Foundation's inaugural conference. What began with a slap exposed rot at the core of systems Americans trust daily. We discovered that racism doesn't always wear obvious faces. Sometimes it hides in corporate policies, judicial procedures, and political influence. Fighting it requires more than addressing individual acts of hatred. We must reform the structures that protect and perpetuate discrimination. The Washington case created lasting legal precedents strengthening civil rights protections in commercial settings. Courts nationwide cited these rulings when evaluating discrimination claims, particularly regarding the pattern and practice standard for establishing systematic bias. Legislative reforms followed, including the Transportation Equality Act, establishing clear federal standards for non-discriminatory treatment and severe penalties for violations. Agent Olivia Carter received the FBI Medal of Valor for her actions, later becoming Assistant Director of the newly established Civil Rights Enforcement Division. James Thompson, the FAA investigator who risked everything to provide crucial evidence, was reinstated with honors and appointed to lead regulatory reform efforts. Gabriela Rodriguez established a specialized legal clinic training attorneys to fight transportation discrimination cases pro bono. Internationally, the case triggered global aviation reforms. The International Civil Aviation Organization adopted Washington standards requiring member nations to implement anti-discrimination policies for airlines operating in their airspace. European Union regulations incorporated specific protections based on lessons from the Atlantic Air case. For Elijah Washington, the ordeal transformed his life's direction. Though completing his MIT degree, he redirected his technological expertise towards social justice applications. His innovations in bias detection algorithms and discrimination pattern recognition became standard tools for civil rights organizations worldwide. At the sentencing hearing's conclusion, a reporter asked Elijah if justice had been served. His response reflected both satisfaction and recognition of continuing challenges. Today, we've seen accountability for specific crimes, and that represents important progress. But true justice requires systems that prevent discrimination rather than punishing it after victims have suffered. We've taken significant steps toward that goal, but this work continues every day in every transportation hub across America. The question isn't whether we've achieved justice today, but whether we're committed to building more just systems for tomorrow. This powerful story teaches us that racism doesn't only manifest in obvious ways, but often hides within systems, policies, and institutional practices. What began as a single discriminatory act, a flight attendant slapping a passenger, revealed an entire network of corruption spanning corporate boardrooms, government offices, and courtrooms. The most profound lesson is that privilege and wealth, while providing resources to fight injustice, cannot fully shield anyone from discrimination. Elijah Washington, despite his father's billions, still faced the same racial prejudice experienced by countless others. The story demonstrates the extraordinary lengths powerful entities will go to protect discriminatory systems. from character assassination and media manipulation to witness intimidation and even attempted murder. It shows how quickly those in power can close ranks when their practices are threatened with exposure. This reveals why systematic discrimination persists. It's protected by interconnected power structures with tremendous resources. Yet the narrative also offers hope by showing how determined individuals can overcome seemingly insurmountable obstacles through persistence, strategy, and coalition building. The Washingtons succeeded by refusing to be silenced, leveraging technology, creatively, building international alliances and valuing systemic change over personal compensation. Perhaps most importantly, the story reminds us that bystanders play a crucial role in fighting discrimination. From Sarah Miller's courageous testimony to Zoe Parker's video recording, individual witnesses choosing to speak up ultimately made justice possible. Even a single person's decision to document injustice can spark transformation. Have you ever witnessed discrimination and wondered what you could do? Would you have the courage to record an incident like Elijah's, even if it put you at risk? Share your thoughts in the comments below about how you would respond in a similar situation. If this story moved you and you believe in standing against injustice, please like and subscribe to support more content that shines light on important social issues. Remember, systemic change begins with individual actions. Your voice matters more than you might realize. Thank you for joining us for this important story, and may we all find the courage to stand for justice when the moment calls.